Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 3 of the Industrial Brief. Imagine a single building using as much electricity as a small city. In this episode, we look at how energy and infrastructure, especially in the Middle East, are becoming the backbone of artificial intelligence. So, let's brief it.
Today, we're tackling a question that feels like its answer changes every single week.
It really does.
How much energy does the massive accelerating growth of artificial intelligence actually require?
It's more than just a question of scale. It's, I think, a foundational challenge. We've got a fascinating stack of sources from a listener who's really interested in the sheer energy demand here.
Right.
We're moving beyond the hype and diving into the hard numbers, global electricity figures, the mechanics of powering it, and, where the next huge compute clusters are actually being formed.
So our mission today is pretty straightforward. We want to unpack this colossal energy footprint of AI.
A physical footprint.
Exactly, the physical side.
Yeah.
We're focusing on the data centers that house it, the infrastructure that fuels it, and the specific regions driving this explosive growth. Our sources all seem to confirm one thing. The energy sector and big tech are now, completely dependent on each other. There's really no turning back.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay, let's unpack this. Starting with the central driver of all this consumption, the modern hyperscale data center.
Absolutely. When we talk about AI energy needs, 99% of that demand is concentrated in these enormous facilities.
Okay.
And the core of the consumption, it comes from two relentless necessities. First, just running the thousands of specialized servers processing these huge streams of data.
And the second?
The second is dealing with the immense heat those servers create. Keeping those machines cool is a silent, but just an incredibly major driver of energy consumption itself.
And the scale it's just difficult to grasp because we've all gotten used to big numbers. But listen to this comparison from our sources.
Yeah.
Today, a single hyperscale data center, one of them, uses about as much electricity as 100,000 households.
100,000.
That's like powering a whole small city just for one facility.
And that number, it's already lagging behind reality. I mean, if you look at the facilities currently under development, the largest data center planned right now will use 20 times that amount.
Wait, 20 times?
20 times.
20 times the electricity of 100,000 homes. That is a truly staggering future demand curve.
It is. And that expected demand, it really explains why global investment in data centers has nearly doubled since 2022.
Doubled? To what kind of number?
We're talking $500 billion, $500 billion in 2024 alone. The money is just flooding in to build the future. But, and this is the key, the infrastructure to power it is really lagging behind.
Okay, so looking at the global picture, our sources say data centers accounted for about 1.5% of global electricity consumption in 2024. That sounds, manageable.
It does, until you project forward. That's where the acceleration caused by AI really begins to bite.
Okay.
By 2030, electricity consumption by data centers is set to roughly double to about 3% of global consumption. That equates to these facilities consuming around 945 terawatt hours a year.
945 terawatt hours. That number means nothing without context. What does that actually look like?
To put 945 TWH per year in context for you, that is approximately as much electricity as the entire country of Japan consumes today.
The whole country?
The entire country.
In its
single year. We're talking about duplicating the total energy budget of one of the world's largest economies just to power data centers.
So AI's energy appetite isn't just growing, it's fundamentally reshaping how we allocate entire national power budgets. That's the real insight here.
Exactly.
And the analysis confirms that the processing needs of AI, those specialized high-performance chips, they're the single most significant driver of this whole thing.
Precisely. This isn't driven by streaming videos or, simple web browsing anymore. It's the colossal computational effort required for training and running large language models.
That kind of concentration must create some significant strategic pressure, right? Because AI is global, but the actual physical infrastructure is highly concentrated.
It is.
So if you're interacting with an AI, your data is probably being routed through just a few key clusters around the world.
That is absolutely correct. Today, a few markets utterly dominate data center electricity consumption. The United States accounts for the largest share at 45%.
Almost half.
Then you have China at 25% and Europe at about 15%. This heavy geographic concentration, it leads to intense pressure on local and regional electricity grids.
And that pressure is particularly acute in the US from what I'm reading. Data centers are on course to account for almost half of the overall growth in US electricity demand between now and 2030.
Just think about that. Half of all new demand. It's a fundamental shift in energy priorities in a very, very short time frame.
The comparison here is it's almost unbelievable. By 2030, the U.S. economy is projected to consume more electricity just for processing data than it will for producing all aluminum, steel, cement, and chemicals combined.
It's an inversion of what we think of as industrial power use. Data processing is rapidly becoming the single largest industrial consumer of power in the country.
Wow, but wait, if the U.S. is risking local grid stability by clustering 50% of new projects in existing dense metro areas, as our sources suggest, aren't they just shooting themselves in the foot? Why not disperse that demand?
That's an excellent question. I mean, dispersal is ideal for grid stability, but the drivers for clustering are speed and connectivity. Data center developers, they want to tap into existing fiber optic networks, be near existing utility infrastructure. It just dramatically cuts down development time.
So when the race is measured in months, not years?
Exactly. The risk of overloading a local grid becomes secondary to the speed of deployment. It's a classic trade-off. Speed versus long-term resilience.
And the effects of this aren't just limited to the U.S. In Japan, data centers could account for more than half of the country's demand growth.
And even in a smaller economy like Malaysia, that growth could be as much as 1/5 of all new demand.
It sounds like this expansion is running headlong into a wall of infrastructure limits.
It is. Existing electricity grids are already under strain in many places, and we estimate that around 20% of planned data center projects globally could face significant delays if those grid strains aren't addressed immediately.
So the bottleneck has moved. It's not about securing capital anymore.
Not at all. The challenge has moved from securing capital to securing gigawatts.
Securing gigawatts. That brings us to the crucial question of the power sources themselves. Where is all this power coming from? The analysis points to two leading sources.
That's right. First, you have natural gas, which is relied upon for base load power, especially in regions where it's cheap and abundant, like the United States and the Middle East.
Okay. And the second?
The second is renewables, particularly solar and wind. They're cost-effective, they're quick to build, and they're strongly supported by countries and the big tech companies trying to hit sustainability goals.
And we should probably mention that the tech sector is actively using its massive capital to try and, bring forward solutions that were previously decades away.
Like what?
Things like new nuclear, small modular reactors, or advanced geothermal solutions. They need the power so badly they're accelerating the entire power generation market itself.
Exactly. But focusing on right now, since natural gas is the default fuel in huge markets like the US and the Middle East, we really need to understand the true embodied energy cost of that fuel.
Meaning the energy spent just to get the natural gas to the power plant in the first place?
Precisely. This is where we have to talk about natural gas compression.
Okay, so what is it, and why is it so necessary to the cost calculation of AI?
It's the essential energy-intensive step in the middle. Natural gas compression is basically the process of squeezing the gas molecules to significantly increase the pressure.
Right.
And its core purpose is just to move that gas efficiently through miles and miles of pipeline from the wellhead to the power plant.
So it's basically the engine that powers the pipelines, and it needs energy input just to keep the gas moving.
You've got it. If you didn't compress it, it would just stop flowing because of friction and elevation changes. And compression is used all through the supply chain.
How so?
Well, producers use it to help lift resources to the surface, and before the gas even reaches the power plant, it's compressed again to help remove liquids and impurities. It's a safety and efficiency standard.
And this compression creates intense heat. That's the key insight, right? The energy you put in doesn't just increase pressure, it dramatically increases temperature.
It does. I mean, take a common multi-stage compressor. When you squeeze the gas in that first stage, its temperature just soars. To move it effectively and get it ready for the next pressure boost, you have to cool it down dramatically using intercoolers.
So it's a constant cycle of heating and cooling along the pipeline.
Repeated several times. It's an inherently inefficient transport system that adds significant, unavoidable energy demand into the system before that gas even hits the turbine to power the data center.
And that inefficiency gets factored into the decision to rely on gas.
It has to be. The decision is based on abundance and local costs, sure, but the embodied energy cost of compression is substantial. It just adds another layer to the overall footprint of AI.
It's fascinating how the physics of pipelines directly informs the economics of AI. And speaking of economics, we need to talk about the Middle East,
Yes.
specifically the Gulf nations, because that region is rapidly becoming one of the most dynamic theaters in this global data center race.
We've seen an extraordinary transformation there. I mean, historically, data center infrastructure was all legacy telecom networks.
Yeah.
Then in the early 2020s, you saw the first global hyperscalers, AWS, Microsoft, come in.
And now
They're accelerating directly into what the industry calls AI native structure effects.
the two central engines driving this are the UAE and Saudi Arabia, right? With both governments pushing these extremely aggressive, multi-billion-dollar sovereign AI strategies.
They view AI compute capacity as a national strategic asset. And here's the truly surprising fact that changes the whole landscape. Capital is not the constraint. Sovereign wealth funds are participating directly. The money is there.
So if they have all the money they need, what is limiting their expansion?
The limiting factors are now power export licensing, getting approval to route the necessary gigawatts, and the timing of specialized AI chip deliveries. We're talking about high-performance GPUs, the engine of AI.
So it's a supply chain and regulatory bottleneck, not a funding problem,
Exactly.
that makes the acquisition of those AI chips a critical geopolitical lever. So let's look at the UAE. They have a relatively mature market already, over 500 megawatts, very low vacancy.
Right. But the announced commitments are just staggering. Microsoft has committed almost $8 billion until 2029, and over $5 billion of that is pure data center capital expenditure.
And then there's G42.
That's the real game changer. G42, which is 15% owned by Microsoft, is developing a mammoth 5-gigawatt compute campus. The first 200 megawatts are slated to go online in 2026.
A 5-gigawatt campus. And we know Microsoft got U.S. approval to ship over 60,000 specialized NVIDIA A800 chips to the UAE. That really underlines how critical that supply is.
It absolutely is, and that points to a key strategic risk, right? If your sovereign AI strategy depends on technology licensed for export by another government, that creates a long-term vulnerability.
A good point.
But for now, they're focused on speed. 90% of demand in the region is owned by the hyperscalers themselves, so they prefer ground leases and built-to-suit projects to maximize speed.
And meanwhile, Saudi Arabia is taking a different, maybe even more ambitious route.
They are. They're basically leapfrogging the whole process. They aren't building general-purpose cloud centers. They're moving straight into building AI-native capacity. They have almost 4 gigawatts of planned expansion underway.
So they're betting that if they build the cutting-edge capacity now, the algorithms and the talent will just follow.
It's an aggressive play. And beyond those two big engines, we see controlled growth in Tier 2 markets like Qatar and Oman, which are investing in new subsea fiber optic cables and the first solar-powered data centers.
What's fascinating to me here is how quickly the historical data center growth pattern has been completely disrupted.
That pattern has been thrown out the window because the planned AI capacity is so enormous. A single AI transaction can now literally double a market size overnight. The planned build-out in Saudi Arabia represents 3 times the current capacity of the entire Middle East market today.
The old scaling model is just obsolete.
Simply.
This intense focus on speed and scale brings us back one last time to the core infrastructure challenge. To meet that planned growth, 4 GW in Saudi Arabia, 2.5 GW in the UAE fast, reliable power is the absolute key.
It is, and cost is central to this.
Right.
Both the UAE and Saudi Arabia are keen to reduce the cost of power, with an expectation that the cost may need to be reduced by up to 50% to fully utilize these new AI deployments.
50%. That's a huge target. That suggests a very aggressive diversification of the energy mix.
Precisely. They are heavily focused on leveraging their natural assets beyond just gas. This includes building major new solar plants in both countries to lower marginal costs, alongside high-efficiency natural gas plants in Saudi Arabia. They're using their reserves to build clean infrastructure.
And given the heat in the region, plus the phenomenal heat generated by those AI chips, I have to imagine advanced cooling is paramount.
Absolutely. Traditional air-cooled facilities just can't handle the power density of these next-gen chips efficiently. That is definitely a trend to watch. Expect to see far more advanced liquid-cooled facilities entering the market there.
So what does this all mean? We've seen that the AI boom isn't just software. It's a massive, tangible infrastructure race requiring gigawatts of power. It's straining grids from the US to Japan, And it's transforming regional economies in the Middle East overnight.
And the key takeaway is that the constraints aren't capital anymore. They've shifted to the physical limits of power infrastructure licensing and grid capacity, and the critical supply chain bottleneck of high-performance AI chips. The next evolution of AI hinges on leveraging low-cost natural gas, large-scale solar, and advanced cooling.
And as we wrap up this deep dive, consider this final provocative thought. Given that one single hyperscale data center can use as much power as 100,000 homes, and the largest centers planned will use 20 times that, this raises a really important question. As AI systems become integrated into every aspect of life, what responsibility do the technology sector and energy companies share in ensuring this rapid, massive growth doesn't inadvertently exacerbate global energy inequalities or compromise existing grid stability?
That brings us to the end of this episode. Thank you for listening, and I hope you found it valuable. Until next time, I'm Abdurrahman Hawass, and this is the Industrial Brief.